It is January 20th, 2024, and welcome once again to an exciting episode of Political Dharma with me, Alan Zundell. Well, I've got a few stories for you revolving around presidential campaigns. The first story is that Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s campaign has started new political parties in 6 states in order to get easier access to the ballot. I'll be talking about some of the pros and cons of that strategy in a minute. Also, I'll be talking about how crazy the New Hampshire Democratic primary is getting, and look at a couple of other stories about other candidates for the presidential election as well. But first, let's turn to the Kennedy campaign. On Tuesday, the Kennedy campaign reported that supporters had filed paperwork to start a new political party in 6 states. The party is named We the People in the states of California, Delaware, Hawaii, Mississippi, and North Carolina, and named the Texas Independent Party in Texas. I haven't yet found out why the Texas party has a different name. The reason for starting new parties is that in these states, the requirements for getting on the ballot as a new party, the candidate of a new party, is easier than getting on the ballot as an independent candidate, which Kennedy has been running as so far. Once a new party becomes qualified for the ballot in those states, then they can nominate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as their presidential nominee. For example, in California, an independent candidate must submit 219,403 voter signatures to get on the general election ballot. But you only have to get 75,000 voters to register with a new party to qualify that party to put a candidate on the ballot. The deadline is a little easier, August 9th for submitting signatures for an independent candidate versus July 5th for getting enough voters to register with a new party. But the number of people you have to reach is about 144,000 fewer, which should be much easier to accomplish. And instead of getting volunteers out on the street collecting signatures, the campaign can ask people to go online and register with the new party. If you're a U.S. citizen and a resident of California, you go to the California Secretary of State's website to either register to vote if you aren't already registered, or to change your registration if you are, selecting Other Party as your party affiliation and writing in We the People, capitalizing the word the and not adding the word party at the end. As for the other states, in Delaware, an independent candidate needs over 7,000 signatures to get on the ballot, while a new party needs less than 800 voter registrations. In Hawaii, an independent candidate needs almost 6,000 signatures, but a new party less than 900 registrations. In Mississippi, an independent candidate needs 1,000 signatures, plus must pay a fee of $2,500. But a new party only needs to meet the state filing requirements for a party, which sounds like ballot access in that state ought to happen very quickly. In North Carolina, an independent candidate needs over 83,000 signatures, but a new party under 14,000 voter registrations. And in Texas, an independent candidate needs over 113,000 signatures, but a new party just slightly over 81,000 signatures. In each case, the campaign needs to reach fewer people to create a new party than to get an independent candidate on the ballot. In other states, the situation is the reverse. It takes more effort to start a new party than to get an independent candidate on the ballot. So the Kennedy campaign is not going to form new parties in the other states. Also, last week I mentioned that in almost half the states, Kennedy will need to have named a vice presidential candidate in order to get on the ballot. Those are the states shaded light blue on the map on your screen if you're watching the video version of this podcast. I reported a rumor last week that RFK would announce Tulsi Gabbard as his running mate in Honolulu last Thursday, but he didn't. He hasn't yet announced who his running mate will be. The strategy of starting a new party does raise some issues. One of them is that a We the People party already exists in some of the states. The Ballotpedia website lists We the People party nominees who've run for state office in Massachusetts, Minnesota, and New York as recently as 2022. In New Jersey, there's also been a We the People party, but it seems to have changed its name to For the People sometime between 2017 and 2021. This raises the possibility of confusion between the new We the People parties and the We the People parties that already exist. There's also potential problems if the new We the People parties try to create some kind of national organization. Also, creating a new party creates an opening for other ambitious politicians to try to gain the party's nomination, whether for other offices, such as maybe U.S. Congress in this election year, or for other future presidential candidates. After Ross Perot's presidential run in 1992, his supporters created the Reform Party and ran Perot as its presidential candidate in 1996. Fighting over control of the party began almost immediately, but the party received a boost in 1998 when former pro wrestler Jesse Ventura won election to the governorship of Minnesota as the Reform Party candidate. More infighting ensued in the presidential nomination process in 2000, which included this candidate.
New York City, and we've got a guest to introduce you to.
A very famous guest.
I'm not necessarily sure if I should welcome you or you should welcome us.
Well, I welcome you on behalf of myself and Conseco, the great insurance company. We welcome you to this wonderful location.
How you doing?
I'm doing very well.
Our new landlord.
I am
nice
indeed.
To be here.
So I figured this should be an easy interview because of the fact I'm the landlord, but you never know. With Bryant, you never know.
No, I'm just asking. I mean, I saw you change party affiliation last week. You went over to the Reform Party.
And we're having a lot of fun, and we're getting great response, and we'll see what happens.
When are you going to make a call?
I would say probably in February.
What's going to be the determining factors?
Whether or not I can win. If I can win, maybe I'll do it. And,
but is that going to be a result of polling, or is that going to be a result of reception
just
you get?
Feeling, everything I do, even buying this great building, this was feel. It's all feel. And getting CBS to come here was feel. Who would have known, right? But we're going to feel it out, and we're going to see. And I think in the end, maybe we'll surprise a lot of people.
That clip from the Today Show 24 years ago can be found on the Atomic TV YouTube channel. And yes, that was Donald Trump. Another candidate for the nomination that year was conservative Pat Buchanan, who left the Republican Party and eventually snagged the Reform Party nomination in 2000. Here's Buchanan speaking to the Reform Party in a clip from the Associated Press archive.
Today, I am ending my lifelong membership in the Republican Party and my campaign for its nomination, and I am declaring my intention to seek the nomination of the Reform Party for the presidency of the United States of America. Never again will our political establishment permit a dissident to come as close to capturing a nomination as we did in 1996. They have rearranged the primary schedules and rigged the game to protect the party favorites. Candidates, and we choose not to play our assigned walk-on role in their sham election.
Clearly, dissatisfaction with the two-party system goes back a long way and has included politicians from a variety of political perspectives. Trump had left the party by the time Buchanan was chosen, saying, quote, "So the Reform Party now includes a Klansman, Mr. Duke, a neo-Nazi, Mr. Buchanan, and a communist, Ms. Fulani. This is not company I wish to keep," end quote. My point is that once you create a new party, it's hard to control the nomination process or the direction that the party ultimately goes in. In one respect, it'd be good to have a party continuing on the effort to take corporate influence out of the government, which is the central plank of the Kennedy campaign. But there's also the danger that in the future, the party could take on an entirely different agenda. I hope the Kennedy people are going to be careful in the way they set this up. All right. Let's now turn to the major party contests. The Republicans held their Iowa caucus on Monday, and as expected, Trump came in way ahead, getting 51% of the vote and half the state's 40 delegates to the Republican nominating convention this summer. The only surprise was that Ron DeSantis narrowly beat Nikki Haley for second place. DeSantis getting 21% of the vote and 9 delegates, and Haley 19% of the vote and 8 delegates. This coming Tuesday, the state of New Hampshire will hold its presidential primaries, which will very possibly seal the deal for Donald Trump. Well, what about the Democrats? Last week, I reported that the New Hampshire Democratic Party is going ahead with its primary despite pressure from the Democratic National Committee not to do so. In 2020, Joe Biden lost the New Hampshire and Nevada primaries to Bernie Sanders and didn't regain first place status until his win in South Carolina. After he won the election, Biden appointed Jamie Harrison of South Carolina as chair of the Democratic National Committee to ensure that what happened in 2020 wasn't going to happen again in 2024. That's why South Carolina was chosen to be the first primary, contrary to the New Hampshire law. The DNC says that it will not recognize any delegates awarded to candidates as a result of the primary, and Joe Biden refused to submit his name to the ballot. However, author Marianne Williamson and Congressional Representative Dean Phillips and several lesser-known candidates will be on the ballot, causing New Hampshire Biden supporters to mount a write-in campaign for Biden. This week, a new group, Vote Ceasefire, also launched a write-in campaign. They want voters to write in the word, quote, ceasefire, end quote, instead of voting for a candidate in order to protest Biden's position on Israel's attacks on Gaza. A further wrinkle is that New Hampshire voters who are not affiliated with the party can opt to vote in one of the major party primaries. How many of these independent voters will opt to vote in the Democratic primary and how they will vote is up in the air. A wild card in the process. I'll cover the results of the New Hampshire primaries in next week's show. Looking forward, the Democrat South Carolina primary will be held about 2 weeks after New Hampshire's on Saturday, February 3rd, followed by the new Nevada primary 3 days later on February 6th. These are different days than for the Republicans, which will hold a caucus in Nevada on February 8th and a primary in South Carolina on February 24th. Both parties will hold primaries in Michigan on February 27th. The graphic on the screen is from the 270 to Win website. And following up on another story from last week, a U.S. District Court has upheld the Florida Democratic Party's right to determine that only one candidate would be included in its presidential primary. That candidate is, of course, Joe Biden. Because there'll be only one candidate, no Democratic presidential primary will be held in Florida this year. The Democratic parties in 3 other states, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Mississippi, have also decided that Joe Biden will be the only candidate on their primary ballot. This will be the 3rd presidential nomination process in a row in which the Democrats will be accused of rigging the process. In 2016, the Hillary Clinton campaign collaborated with the Democratic National Committee to kneecap Bernie Sanders' campaign. And in 2020, the former President Barack Obama worked behind the scenes to try to get other candidates to drop out and support Joe Biden, again, to stop Bernie Sanders from winning the nomination. This doesn't help the Biden campaign's claim that it's going to be the protector of democratic processes in the United States. Meanwhile, other parties, or pseudo parties in the case of no labels, continue to bump up against the adversaries of competition in our democratic elections. On January 11th, No Labels wrote a letter to the U.S. Department of Justice accusing a variety of Democrats, anti-Trump Republicans, and affiliated organizations of a criminal conspiracy to deny Americans their right to choose the leaders they want to represent them. They cite numerous examples of harassment and intimidation, all in an effort to ensure the election of Joe Biden and prevent any other candidate from challenging him. Some of the groups involved are Third Way, Move On, Citizens United, the Lincoln Project, and Public Citizen, and they also cite involvement by the White House and the DNC. No Label says that it's not a political party because it hasn't supported any particular candidates for office, only working to create ballot access for a potential candidate outside the two major parties to run for president. It claims that this exempts them from campaign finance reporting requirements. Earlier this month, No Label secured ballot access in two more states, Maryland and Delaware, bringing the total number of states it has ballot access in to 14. The Libertarian and Green parties also grew the number of states they have ballot access in this month, bringing the Libertarians to 35 and the Greens to 19 states. Speaking of the Green Party, Dr. Jill Stein of the Green Party has asked the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn a lower court's finding that it is constitutional for the Federal Elections Commission to discriminate against minor parties in the way matching funds for campaign contributions to presidential campaigns are determined. At issue is $175,000 in matching funds that the FEC is requiring the Stein 2016 presidential campaign to repay because it was used to pursue ballot access in some states after Stein had already become her party's nominee and the major party conventions were over. Since pursuing ballot access is considered part of a minor party's primary campaign, Stein says that cutting off funds while a candidate is still pursuing ballot access is arbitrary and discriminates against minor parties. Yet another example of the way the electoral system is stacked against anyone other than the two major parties. That's my stories for this week. If you found something worthwhile on the show, be sure to like and subscribe. I've also created a new Rumble channel. So if you use Rumble, or if you ever have trouble finding me on YouTube, search for and subscribe to Political Dharma on Rumble. I think I'll have to allow ads on the Rumble version of my video. Otherwise, I don't think they'll promote it the way YouTube sometimes does to potential viewers. So I think this week I'll try out that version, although I can't see why anyone want to buy ads on a show that right now has 0 followers on Rumble. Political Dharma is also available in audio version on Spotify and other podcast platforms. So if you prefer just listening, go look for it there. Thanks once again for watching. Signing off now until next week. Bye.
With ease, I see the chains are breaking. We gained our focus, the moves we're making will prove to determine our self-worth as a passenger on this vehicle Earth.